Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us wherever you are around the world. First, I'd like to acknowledge you and thank you for taking the time out of your day and your busy schedules to actually invest in yourself. So thank you for taking that time out. I promise you we're going to be giving you a strategy that when we finish the webinar that you'll be able to apply and deploy immediately. So before we get started, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tess Brooke. I'm a communication and change specialist, and I help organisations go through change, and particularly where there's issues in culture, issues with behaviour, and I love being able to teach people communication skills and techniques. And this is probably the most valuable technique. The one you're going to learn today is probably the most valuable technique I can give you that will start the ball rolling, will start giving you the skills to be able to confidently, even though you might be nervous or a little bit scared, to be able to start applying something that's really valuable to you, and it'll start to change your life. I wish I'd learnt it much, much sooner. Before I go any further, I'd love to introduce my co-host, Michelle Pedersen. We first met in 2006, we worked out, where we both worked for a large global organisation in quite different roles, but we were an awesome team back then and we're an awesome team still. I would like to ask Michelle to just say a little bit about herself and give you a little bit of her background. Okay, you're off mute. Go for it.
Excellent, thank you. Hi, as Tess gave me that lovely introduction, I'm Michelle, and I had a background, I guess, in human resources. So started working in mining and construction and industrial relations, and then started working in health, and since then moved into change management roles, leading corporate teams and government, not-for-profit sectors as well. And now I work as a consultant, helping teams, achieve maximize their performance. And I guess one of those key elements is around sometimes you need to have really difficult conversations to get the outcomes you're looking for. So this is corresponds really well with the work that Tess does. So it's great to be here today. Thanks, Tess.
It's great to have you, Michelle. What we're going to do now is just ask people to use the chat box to let us know where they're from and let us know what time it is. I have had a comment that the sound is terrible. It's probably the fan that's sitting above me. I'm going to turn that off. So if you can use the chat box and actually let us know where you're coming from and what time frame you're in. Diane, I hope the sound is better for you. So we've got the US, Brizzy, Launceston, Tasmania. Tasmania is beautiful. Launceston is beautiful. So I'm coming from Brisbane. The other thing I'd like to actually just ask you, if you could also put in the chat box, now that we've got our fingers going, that what role you're in, whether you're looking at this from a HR role, whether you're a team leader, team manager, or is it something that you're looking for personally, this exit strategy for yourself? So, and you've got a pending conversation. So if you can just let us know a little bit about why you were interested in this particular webinar. New Mexico, wow. Okay, New Mexico. So, and we've got Donna in HR and personally. So what is an exit strategy? So for me, an exit strategy is a pre-prepared method of professionally exiting a conversation so that you look after your reputation and the reputation of others. And being pre-prepared is really important because when the conversation starts going off on tangents or starts to deteriorating or behaviours starting to get worse, it's much harder to think in the moment than if you've already crafted a baseline of a conversation, so a baseline of your exit strategy. So that preparation is really, really important. The difference between thinking stressed and thinking when you've had time to prepare is amazing. Typically, our dysfunctional conversations or our challenging conversations tend to be with the same people. So we get into patterns, we operate on autopilot, And we end up repeating the same conversations around and around again, over and over again. And we do it on autopilot. And something's got to change, something's got to give. And so because we're tending to interact with people repeatedly, we have insights to some of their traits, which actually is really helpful for us when we prepare for a difficult conversation. Now, we won't always have the opportunity to prepare, and we can also understand the structure and be able to create it as we go. However, where we can, and if we know we've got a difficult conversation pending, having a prepared exit strategy is really important. I'd like to actually just explore a little bit more about why we should have an exit strategy. Michelle and I have talked about this quite a few times, and that personally, it's amazing because we don't need to feel trapped in a conversation, but organizationally, like, I think it would be brilliant if everybody learned to have an exit strategy. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely, Tess. I think the main reason I think it is important to have an exit strategy is so often it's the fear of having to have the conversation that people put off having the conversation at all. And therefore, we don't do things like address poor performance or discuss something that might need to be spoken about in the workplace. So I think giving people the confidence and knowing that it is okay to exit, and that you can do it in a planned and structured way, makes sure that the conversations do happen, because it is important that those tough conversations do occur.
They do. And when you have conversations not being addressed, that starts to create ripple effects in the organization. People get frustrated. Good people ultimately end up leaving. Managers often haven't been equipped with the skills to have these conversations. They get promoted for being excellent technically or doing their job really well, but they're not given these people skills. And people feel as though they're being rude, or they feel as though they're going to offend somebody. But the really wonderful thing about this exit strategy is it's actually quite friendly. It's actually sometimes a little bit firm. However, you're doing it in a polite and professional manner, and that makes a huge difference. Just, yeah, I'm excited to be sharing this with you. But we have so many different types of dysfunctional conversations in the workplace. Some of them could be inappropriate behaviours. Some of them could be simply people are distracted, conversations are going off on tangents. Some of them could be, and I've used this myself in some really tough situations where I've been struggling and I've been the one facilitating the conversation or meeting, and I've needed to have a break. And so being able to exit myself out of the conversation so I can have a break and collect my thoughts has been a really powerful tool to be able to do. And to do it in a way that it's okay. It's okay to actually be able to exit. The starting points that we have to look at. But one of the first stages about being able to bring together an exit strategy is to be able to give yourself permission to exit. And often we feel as though we have to push through with the conversation, we have to push through to get an outcome. But we can actually give ourselves permission to exit, and then we can actually pause. We can take that time to gather our thoughts, helps other people gather their thoughts, and come together again so that we can actually have a better second round at the conversation. Can you imagine, like within the HR sort of space, you'll be coaching people to have those conversations. So being able to add into those coaching moments, and I love the expression coaching moments, like often HR roles and managers are constantly having what I call coaching moments to help and guide the staff to a particular outcome. In those coaching moments, you can actually slip in the exit strategy. Go, okay, well, when you're having this difficult conversation, when you're having this conversation, you can also have exit strategy in your toolkit.
I guess one of the things I wanted to just see if everyone wants to put in the chat function was, what are some of, I guess, Tess and I have talked about a few of the examples of where we've used this structure and the types of scenarios that we've applied the exit strategy. Just for those of you that are online, if you want to jump in the chat function, when was the last time that you had a dysfunctional conversation, and perhaps start getting your thinking going around when you might be able to apply this exit strategy. We'll see what types of things you come up with. So just jump in the chat now.
So was it this week, or was it last week? Do you have one coming up next week? When was the last one you had, and is it still annoying you? Often our dysfunctional conversations take up more of our time and more of our energy and really interfere with our day. So to be able to, even if a conversation is going off on a tangent, just to be able to bring it and keep it more concise and more on point, we can gain. In fact, 2 days ago, I was in a meeting, we were able to gain a half hour back out of the day because we actually kept it really tight and kept it focused. So, and using the exit strategy just to keep the first steps of the exit strategy to keep people on point. Monday, I had a conversation with my manager last week. Has anyone got an exit, a tough conversation coming up this week? Today, tomorrow, early next week? And is it chewing away at you?
One of the things I like what you just said, I'll touch on that you just said before, Tess, was around the keeping it on point. I think so often we go into meetings or conversations and we go in and we're prepared that it's going to be tough, but we sometimes aren't specific on the objective we're trying to get out of it. So I think one of the really useful things about this is keeping us on track to achieve and deliver an outcome. As you said, we're all short on time to get the outcomes we need, and as quickly and as we can. You don't want it dragging on for too long.
And it doesn't mean that we're curt or we're rude. It will show you a very friendly way to be able to do this. So as I said, one of the first challenges I have when I'm coaching people with the exit strategy is literally for them to get the idea that they can exit the conversation, and they need to give themselves permission to exit that conversation. And once they start to go, oh, can I really? You can actually start to see them relax and they go, oh, yeah, maybe I just can. And so I'll often ask the question, what is the point in staying in the conversation if it's going to create further issues, do damage, or continue to go around in circles? So why not exit, reconvene, and then come back and go again? So I often just let that thought of giving yourself permission to exit just sit and percolate, and then I tend to go on and talk to people about, well, why would you exit? And so I have an awesome checklist which we can send through to you, but we go through a number of questions. So would you exit if you, as I explained in my example before, if you were struggling to stay in control of your thoughts, if you were struggling to keep the conversation on point, or if you're starting to react to the other person. So all of those are very valid reasons for you to exit, and they're about you. So, or would you exit if other people were not being constructive in the conversation, if they were taking the conversation off topic, if they're starting to personalize and attack you or somebody else? Sometimes people will start to blame somebody else if they're using inappropriate language or being accusational. Would you exit if they're not listening to you? How many times have you been in a meeting and they're actually just not listening to you? They're just listening for the pause to actually make their comments, or they're pushing their views forward but not listening to anyone else in the room. Or if your view is being dismissed, would you exit? And quite often we tend to try harder, we push harder in those situations rather than sort of finding another way to approach it. So we've got these checklists that we can provide to you, which we'll give you the details on at the end of the webinar. But so what we're doing when we're looking at these reasons why you would exit is identifying what your personal boundaries are. If you are uncomfortable if someone starts to get angry, or if you're uncomfortable when someone's shouting at you, that's a personal boundary. And so that boundary would then be something that you would actually consider that you might use your exit strategy for. And it's not that you would exit like that and that you don't just walk straight out. We'll take you through how to exit professionally. It's about identifying what situations you would exit for and then preparing your exit strategy for that situation. And I think the workplace would be a much better place if more people were able to be clear around what their personal boundaries are, because then they would, instead of letting some situations go on and then walking away feeling really frustrated about it, that starts to erode their relationship. If they go, hey, do you mind just letting me finish what I'm trying to say? It'll make a massive difference than walking away getting really annoyed. So the second part is, after we give ourselves permission to exit, is just knowing what our boundaries are, knowing what pushes our buttons, what our triggers are, and being ready to have a comment or your exit strategy to address that if there's no point in staying in the conversation. And I wish I'd learnt that much, much younger. I can remember my boss pulling me up after a very early on, my first management role, in fact. It was actually with the company that I was working for when Michelle and I worked together, but Michelle wasn't there at the time, and she hadn't started with the company, and another manager had called me into a conversation, called me and my team and his team in, and he was like really going hard at me and my team, and it was like, and he had started in the wrong position, and he actually had his facts wrong, and I was able to say, oh, however, what about blah blah blah, and afterwards, I stepped out of that meeting being right. I was so right, and afterwards, my boss said to me, how do you think working with him is going to go moving forward when you just made him look like an idiot in front of all his team? And I was like, that's not fair. He picked on me, blah blah blah. And while I was right, being right was so wrong. And if I had, it was probably my first major learning as a manager. And out of that, I've actually learned that it's really important, no matter how much we feel about a situation. And then at that point in time, I thought he was so wrong, and I was so justified. Being right and justified doesn't get me anywhere. Not if I have to work with him for another 18 months on this project. It just would make things worse. And it took a very long time for us to sort of recover our position. So as much as it was a bitter pill to swallow and a hard pill to swallow at the time, it's a learning that stayed with me forever, and has contributed to the exit strategy that we're sharing with you today. So I think we've all got those war stories, haven't we, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys have come here to learn the exit strategy. So let's jump in and show you how to do it. I'm a big, massive believer that everyone should have an exit strategy just in case they need it. And as I said previously, an exit strategy is a pre-considered method to exit a conversation politely and professionally. Just recapping, we need to give ourselves permission to exit, and we need to create that breathing space. And we do that by knowing what is unacceptable to us, so we know when we will exit and when we will stay in the conversation. So there's 4 foundations to an exit strategy. And we start with actually we need to be clear on what the purpose of the conversation is. Otherwise, how do we know if we're going off on tangents? How do we know if the conversation, even if it's a little bit tough, is not actually aligning to achieve a better outcome? So we need to be on purpose, and hopefully collectively we're on purpose with the overall outcome of the conversation. Then what we actually need to start to focus on is we need to monitor ourselves as we go. We need to monitor, well, are we contributing to where things are at in the conversation, or how are other people going? Are we actually staying on track? Are we staying on purpose? If we see that we are actually going off on a tangent, or we're going away from the purpose, we need to be able to pivot back. So because we've been monitoring, we have that level of awareness, and so we can actually be the one to take action and say, hey, it appears we're going off on a tangent, or I'd like to bring our focus back onto the topic. And so the 4th component of it is actually exiting. So these are the 4 foundations of it. Now I'll show you how we bring it together to so it doesn't seem rude or abrupt. But the monitoring is a really important part of it. We need to be aware of ourselves. We need to be aware of, are we contributing, as well as what is the other person doing? And I talk more about that in some of the stuff that I've written, but we'll keep it brief today. Strategy looks like this. We start on purpose. We monitor. If things are going off on a tangent, we actually then go, or just starting to deteriorate, we pivot back to the purpose. As I said, peers were going off on a tangent. I'd really like to be able to bring the conversation back to talk about how we're going to achieve X. And so then we keep monitoring. If it goes off on a tangent again, you take the second opportunity to pivot. And I'll explain how to do that in a second. And then we keep monitoring again. And if it continues to go off on a tangent or deteriorate, we then deploy the exit strategy. We actually go, okay, and we'll show you how to do that. So there's 3 action steps in the exit strategy. There's pivot point 1, pivot point 2, and we actually exit. So the first step is where we actually introduce the possibility of exiting. So you introduce the idea that if we can't stay on track or we can't stay focused, we may reschedule. The second pivot point, when the behaviour or action reappears, we politely push back and ask them if they would like to reschedule. And the third step is we politely push back and we reschedule. So we're actually, we'll give you some examples of some scripts you can use. And so step 1, where we make the suggestion, is it appears we're going off on a tangent. I really need you to stay focused on, X. If we can't, we may need to reschedule the conversation. Step 2, it appears you are struggling to stay focused. Would you like to reschedule the conversation for another day? So you're giving them an action in this, you're giving them a decision point in this. And step 3, I'd like to work through this, but I'm going to reschedule the meeting. It appears you're struggling to stay with me on point, and it'll give us both time to gather our thoughts. I'll reschedule for X, or something along those lines. So it's still friendly, it's still polite, it's still very professional, but you're keeping it focused and you're keeping it tight. Do you have any comments, Michelle?
Tessa, I really like, I think, and I have tried to, or I have applied Tessa's method that she just showed there up on the screen. The really good thing, I think, Tess, is that you do give those multiple opportunities, and it's almost like a bit of a funnel. So it's, it's not, and I think, as you say, you do it politely and professionally, and it's about shifting that accountability onto the other person to take some, to make that decision around the choice of whether they, stay in the conversation at hand or it's rescheduled for a later time, which works really well in terms of making them take some ownership of where the discussion is heading to.
And I think the other thing I really like about the 3 steps, like if you've got a manager who says to you, well, why did you leave the conversation? You can say, hey, I left because we weren't achieving what we needed to achieve. And I did go through these 3 steps. I did actually give them a chance to get back on track. In fact, I did it twice and I thought, well, let's not waste anyone else's time. So you can actually explain your actions, and you can also explain that you can show them that you did it very, very professionally and politely. Sometimes some people may react to it. They may feel as though it's being rude. However, I would argue that the fact that you might be asking someone to stop talking over you, or you might be asking someone to refocus, is actually, it might be being a little bit firm, but it's not actually being rude. So I would rather take this, and sometimes you need to be a little bit firmer. It depends on the context. That I'd rather take this approach and get a chance to be back on topic and reconvene than to actually let things deteriorate or let things go nowhere and walk away going, well, what was the point of that meeting? Within the structure, there's 3 steps. It's 3 things, 3 distinct formats. Step 1 is a suggestion. We may need to reschedule. So you're planning the idea so that when you ultimately exit, they shouldn't be surprised because you already gave them insight that you may reschedule. Step 2, would you like to reschedule, is a question. And step 3 is a statement. So you're taking back control. And so regardless of what situation you are applying your exit strategy in, these 3 steps apply. Sometimes you might blend step 1 and 2, sometimes you might blend step 2 and 3. However, these 3 principles apply, that you make the suggestion, you ask the question, or you reschedule. Sometimes if it's not going really well, you might forget about the question and go straight to reschedule. You go, oh, no, I'm not going there. I'm not ready to go there. And for those of you who read the case study we sent out, James wasn't ready to go to step 2. He didn't think he would be able to maintain his responses anymore. So he went bang straight out and rescheduled. Oh, in his case, he didn't reschedule. He actually sent his update out. So what actually happens here, if you notice the blue in these bullet points, we shift from we to them to you. If you can't stay focused, we may need to reschedule. It appears that you're struggling to stay focused. Would you like to reschedule? And it appears you're struggling to stay focused. I will reschedule for later in the week. So we shift from we to them to you. So then they have a level of accountability in their process. And this is important. It means that you're not the only one carrying the decision, even though you ultimately take back control. You are, they've got a level of accountability in step 2 to get back on focus. Okay, most of the time, not all the time, most of the time people will, would you like to, when you ask, would you like to reschedule? I don't know, let's stay, let's keep going. My experience is if people are quite emotional, like teary kind of emotional, they will often take the opportunity to reschedule. However, most other cases, people tend to push on. But I mean, that's a broad generalization, and those of you who know me well know I don't like using them, but I have. Michelle, any comments?
I think you're right, Tess, about the control piece is really important, and the demonstrating that you gave them fair opportunity, I guess, early on, and then taking that accountability for the direction that the conversation goes. And I think in particular, for example, in a human resources perspective, that you do give fair opportunity for the conversation to stay on track, and that you could comfortably say at the end of it, should you remove yourself from the conversation, that you could say, look, I did give it a fair go, but I didn't feel comfortable, and that's okay. And I think, like you said before on the example with James, is it doesn't necessarily mean you've got to stay in the conversation. You might be able to achieve the same outcome, but in a different way, and that's okay as well. So it can be flexible, and it can be quite dynamic, but I guess the structure gives you a format to work within, especially when it can be a bit emotional or quite heated, or when you're having these conversations, just to refer you back to and keep you on track.
Yes, and the thing with this is it's actually your exit strategy. So it's yours to deploy. It's yours to come up with the scripts that you want to use, so you can put it in your own language. And sometimes I'll suggest having 2 attempts at writing it, because often we'll start with, I need you to blah, 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 which is a statement. So we need to turn that into a question. Can you stay focused with me on this? So the tone is different and it's subtle. So writing it, pre-preparing it, but pre-preparing it so that they have a level of accountability is so important. And we need to give ourselves permission to be kind to ourselves as well when we do this, because we may write it, and when we deploy it, it may come out slightly differently. And like James in that example, when he didn't think he'd be able to manage his reaction moving forward. So he adapted it, and we'll all adapt in the moment. So it's yours to learn, to apply, and to own. You make it your own, make it your own language. We can use the exit strategy in so many ways. And here's a few. So most of us will use it for our own personal boundaries. We'll use it with our kids, we'll use it with a coworker. We could use it when you want to keep a meeting tight and you just want to keep people focused. You just can use the first step of the exit strategy. And can we stay focused on blah, blah, blah? You can use it in team discussions. And I'm not sure if Tracy might be on the call. She said she'll see if she could. I have a client, Tracy, and we were talking about one of her staff actually got quite an abusive call from one of their customers. And this is quite unusual, but she didn't quite know how to handle it. And so we talked about Tracy is going to get all her staff together and talk about what the team boundaries are, what is unacceptable for the team, what is unacceptable behaviour for clients, and then how do they respond to it. So they are going to craft an exit strategy and those really polite responses. And it could be that they have the exit strategy and then that staff member steps out and brings in a more senior person, or it could be that they have an exit strategy that they then call the customer back at another point in time. But they're collectively using it to work out what their values are for the team and what's important to them, and then from there putting boundaries around some external person or the customer's behaviours. And as I alluded to before, you could also use it as a file note. If your boss says, oh, well, why did you exit the conversation? I said, well, I did these 3 steps. It wasn't going anywhere. If you know that the particular conversation is problematic, you can actually then use that as a file note to put on record that on this day, we said this, and this is how I exited it. And exited it. Okay. So there's a number of different ways. So what are some of the different ways that you could use exit strategy?
Tess, I'll just touch on something you said there around using it, and I think you're absolutely right, applying it to your situation. And the customer service one's a great one. And it was funny, until you said that to me yesterday, I hadn't thought of that as a scenario in which we might apply the exit strategy. But I think you're right, it's not necessarily, one of the outcomes could be the rescheduling of a meeting, it could be the escalation to a supervisor or a manager. But I think that one of the really valuable things is that pre-planning and defining what your boundaries are, whether it's as an individual, as a team. What is it that we're not going to tolerate? What's that line in the sand where you just say, hey, look, if we get to this point, that's not okay. And then that's my trigger to, start implementing the exit strategy. And I think I really like the idea with the customer service one around the team defining what those boundaries are, and there's that consistency and that agreement that these are the values of how we want our staff to be treated, and they don't need to tolerate this from our customers, and they're therefore all given permission to exit and exit safely. Yeah. And that's okay.
Now, I love that from a point of view of, say you're that staff person on the call and you're you're copying the bad behavior on the call. You then know that you're using words and language that has been approved. You're not out on a limb, you're not making a decision on behalf of the group. If you do and you're comfortable and you feel comfortable saying, hey, look, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. Depending on the context and the situation, every situation is different. But your staff then feel so much safer. They feel so much more comfortable that they're supported in what they're saying, and it's really interesting. A lot of you are giving us lots of comments around context of when you would apply it, and that there's quite a few comments that here in the question box. I just want to pick up on one that I saw. It's around, outcomes and relationships are fractured and broken down. And also there was another one around, there was a comment in there around trust. What this exit strategy can do, where you've got situations that are relationships are broken down. In an ideal world, we'd love to have a magic wand and we could wave it and you could repair a relationship. You can't do that. If a relationship is damaged and if it's trust-based, it's very, very hard to recover that. People they might be not trust-based, values-based. If people have got very different values or perceived to have different values from each other, it's very hard to recover that. However, what you can do is be clearer around what's acceptable and unacceptable. And by using the exit strategy, you can do it politely and professionally. And in the example that James, that I set out in the case study, he was very clear that this was not acceptable. Now he and I have to, Miss Nasty McNasty, which is the nickname he had for her in the case study. I have to be careful because I've changed the names of the people to protect the innocent and the guilty. And so in my mind, I want to use their actual names. And so, he will never be best friends with her, nor she with him. However, what actually transpired over time is, the behaviours improved. And so they were able to start to work together more effectively. It doesn't mean that he will trust her or her trust him. You can sort of go, okay, this is my expectations about a working relationship, and you're being clear about it. If you've got ongoing challenges with a particular individual, you may want to talk to your manager or the HR person about it and say, hey, I want to do this. I don't want to create an issue. I'm just going to say, this is not acceptable using this strategy and approach. So I would be suggesting you take that kind of step if necessary with the support of your HR person or with the knowledge of your manager, because you don't want the other person to come back and go, they're picking on me in a meeting or this or that. Some people could perceive that James was picking on his coworker in a meeting. That could be their perception of how it was interpreted. He maintained a very professional approach to what he did. So stories go back to your manager and your boss. So if you're going to deploy something like this in more of a public space, like a group meeting or something, go potentially talk to your manager or HR or someone that's going to support you and be in a champion for you, or a coach, or go, yeah, you've got this. Your thoughts, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely, Tess. I think the point you did touch on there around that communicating with others early around, being clear on what your boundaries are, and that letting others know what your boundaries are, because we all do differ, and some people's level of tolerance of what they're prepared to put up with before they want to engage their exit strategy will vary, and that's okay. But sometimes letting others know, hey, look, if it gets to this point, that's not okay for me, so I'll give you a forewarning that I will be looking to exit from the conversation. And just having others, as you say, I think that helps them to help you by having that awareness and understanding and support you if they know what that line in the sand is.
And I think too, I'll give you a word of caution. I suggest choose well who your support person is, because you don't want somebody that is going to say, oh, they shouldn't be doing that, and they're wrong. You're trying to move towards a new outcome, and you don't want someone to reinforce a whole pile of beliefs that justifies. Like I wanted in that example with my boss, I want him to go, yeah, no, well done. He wasn't going there. He gave me the best advice I could have had at the time. Pick your sort of support crew well, and yeah, so you want to move towards a different outcome. Pick your support crew well. So I have some exciting news, exciting announcement to share with you guys. And if you guys would like your worksheets so you can actually create your own exit strategy, please pop it in the question box and please say, hey, worksheets. And because the reason being is I'm pretty excited. Drum roll, drum roll, drum roll. I've actually written a book, Exit, How to Professionally Exit a Dysfunctional Workplace Conversation. Here she is. And the great thing with the book, there's some awesome things in here. Things like be kind to yourself, you've got this, and accompanying this, we actually have, I've got part of resources on the website that you can download. You've got your worksheets on the website. We've got case studies on the website. And so the book, I'm really thrilled to be able to give the book. The ebook is free, and I'm very passionate about giving it away because, and thank you everyone for your congratulations. I'm really passionate about giving this away because I think this is the most valuable tool I can give anybody, and I'm so passionate about helping people find that aha moment and get on top of some of the challenges, the communication challenges, and never feeling trapped in a conversation is so important. So if you want the ebook, please put in the question box just ebook, and we will be sending you a free copy of the ebook, and that will give you access to all the free resources as well. Yeah, so the book is actually at the printers at the moment, so I'm pretty excited. So
It's a very cool book, everyone. I got to see an early draft, wasn't it, Tess?
yes.
And I think for those of you who are on the call today, the really valuable thing about the book and also the worksheets is it's a really, once you have those in your hot little hands, it's a really practical tool that you could take tomorrow and use and practice in your first conversation. So all the things that Tess has talked about today is it's got, and it's those prompts to help you prepare before the conversation and give you a structure when you're in it, so that you look at these things. I guess I really like about it, I'm a bit of a structured, planned person. I like the structure that it provides to remove some of that anxiety and emotion that comes from even just knowing that you might have to have a conversation, that sense of angst in preparation for it, and then the during as well. So yeah, absolutely.
You
That
can
I think,
walk, you've got the secret tool in your pocket.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, even just that gives, I know when I've used it, the confidence to know that you've got a plan you refer to when sometimes your brain's feeling a bit jumbled, that it can help make some sense of what might be a tough conversation.
Yeah, and so I have another a favor, no obligations whatsoever. If you read the book and you like it, please forward the link that we'll send you to others. I am so passionate about people learning this technique and developing this confidence. I'm being very brave, and I've got a link up where people can submit their reviews of the book as well. So we'll include that. So and I would welcome your feedback, your constructive feedback. And one of the challenges in writing a book is getting feedback before you actually finish it. And this is my first book, and I was very nervous about getting feedback for a number of reasons. I'm dyslexic, and I absolutely hated school and hated writing. So this was like initially was like what I would consider to be my worst nightmare. However, in the process, I've discovered I've really enjoyed writing, even though I can't spell and my grammar is shocking. It's been properly proofread, everybody, a professional proofread it. And actually, as each person reviewed the book, I really took on board the feedback because it helped me understand more about how other people were interpreting it, and it gave me clarity to help me express it more clearly and concisely, so that it becomes as useful as possible. And so that was a surprising relief on the journey, I guess. The hard copy will be for sale, and if anybody wants a signed hard copy, please put in the question box, signed copy please, and It is $19.95 plus postage. So depending where you're at, we'll private message you or email you and find out where we're sending it. And however, I would just love you guys to share their free ebook. That would be awesome.
Thanks, Tess. Has anyone, I guess, last opportunity to put some questions in the chat if you've got any for Tess?
I'm happy
Myself.
to.
Mostly Tess.
I'm happy to also go, okay, if someone's got an example that they'd like to work through an exit strategy. While we're just looking at that chat box, the book has got two sections. It's actually got section 1 is the exit strategy and how to build and create your exit strategy. But section 2 is case studies and how my clients have used it. And in addition to the James's case study, which you've got in the email when you registered, we've also got a case study of a gentleman by the name of Steve, and he had a staff member that was constantly making assumptions and had a bit of conspiracy theory that her boss was out to get her, etc. So there's a case study using the exit strategy and using the exit strategy to constructively get them to be thinking of part of the next step. And so we talk about in those case studies, we have a bit of a transcript, then we've got do's and don'ts and what to avoid saying, etc. And then there's a case study where I'm dealing with a very aggressive person and who needs to offload and rant. And then another case study where Anne is actually dealing with someone who's quite emotional and would often sit in the office with could sit in the office for an hour and cry without talking. So using the exit strategy to and helping the exit strategy helping put steps in the process for her staff person to think and focus. So we've got some case studies and we'll be adding more. And so those ones that we've talked about are in the book, but we'll be adding more to the website online resources. And the other really cool thing in here is we have exit cards. So these will be perforated. So there's a purpose card, a monitor, a pivot, and an exit card. And there's a cool little story in the book. One of my clients, Justine, she used to mentally think of a red card, yellow card system like in football, a referee sending someone in the sin bin. So the yellow card would be like, putting herself, she said she'd put herself on notice and to monitor herself and whether she's contributing to the outcomes of the conversation. And then the red card is like, she's like, yeah, no, I need to deploy the exit strategy before I say or do anything that'll make the situation worse. So she'd red card herself. And so in the book, we have those cards that you can pop out and suggestions on how to use it. So, yeah. So how to work with someone that thinks, I'm trying to read that one. How to work with someone that thinks I'm never wrong and continues to say this is just who I am. Okay, I'm just going to give you a little bit of psychology behind that. And it sounds like they've got a case of selective perception bias, that they're looking at a situation from solely their view, their perspective, and they're not listening to or considering that other people might have a valid view. And so when we're looking, and I'm just wondering an example that I can give you. So it's about helping them actually see a slightly different view. And so with the first step of the exit strategy, with the first step of the exit strategy in that kind of situation, it could be, look, I really would like to talk to you about this. It appears that you're really wedded to this particular view. Can you help me understand why that approach is important to you? First, find out why they're so wedded to that approach. Okay, that's interesting. Have you considered such and such? So you put what you want to get them to think about, like your perspective. Have you considered such and such? And then or how would you handle such and such, like the aspect that you're coming in from. So you're actually getting them to do the thinking of what's in your head. And then and so the case study that I've got in the book, actually, the guy that's really angry, he was not considering anyone else's point of view, and he was really reacting badly when he was being criticized for being perceived to be really locked in a particular view. And so often you might need 2 conversations with these people. Have you considered blah, blah, blah? We might need to reschedule this, and we'll come back and explore it at a later date, because you don't want to put them on the spot to shift immediately. You want to plant the seed. So sometimes the exit strategy could be, say, 2 conversations or a 3rd conversation. So you want them to be able to have time to work it through. So by turning what you're wanting to share with them into a question that they can then look at it, have you considered this? How would you handle that? Without knowing the exact context of your situation, Teresa, that's how I would be approaching it. So understanding why that particular view is important to them, then positioning it as a question to them. How would you handle blah, blah, blah? I'd like to give you some time to think about this. Let's reschedule later in the week. So, and you don't even need to, sometimes you don't even need to say, I'd like to give you some time to think about this. You can say, look, let's reschedule for later in the week. So you're not putting pressure on them to change, but you're planting the seed for them to go in a different way. Sometimes also they can perceive that they could be wrong, but it's about cracking that door open for them to consider possibilities. So there is a case study in the book that covers that to an extent, not directly to that exact point, but I don't really know the exact context, but I hope that helps, Teresa. I hope that helps. Well, I'm mindful that we are smack bang on 12:30.
Bang on time.
I would like to thank my gorgeous co-host Michelle for joining me, and I'd like to thank you all for being jumping in today. And I will be looking at the questions, and I'll be sending you guys the links to the ebook and sending you guys the book, etc. So, and thank you again, and I hope you don't have to apply it soon, but I hope you're able to apply it soon so that you can get some runs under your belt. Try it with your kids, try it with your dog. It's hear the words come out of your mouth. Be the change you want to see in the world. Go out and influence the world, change the outcomes. So thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tess. Thanks, everyone.